Hello, beautiful soul tribe. I cannot wait for you to listen to the beautiful conversation that I just completed with Dmitria. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about who she is and her purpose, which is absolutely beautiful and so amazing. So, she is an author and a coach. She helps people reconnect with their spirit, helping them to see the parts of themselves that have been lost or forgotten along the way in their life. She shares about her experience leaving her corporate world and stepping into this heart centered space. We talk about how yoga has transformed her life. And really, we talk a lot about the space and the cycle of evolution, of the growth and how we experience things and it becomes who we are. And then there's this space of releasing and letting go and regrowing, opening up the space for more expression, for more communication, and how, along with what we have learned and what we are learning, how we continue on with those things that we have learned and how they are brought with us into the future. Are you searching? Are you looking for something new, something different? Are you being called to your ancestral roots? The Modern Sages podcast is a tribe of women that believe in exploring beyond the broken constructs of society. We believe in empowering women to embrace the medicine within, all with an open mind, baby. So, before we jump in, I typically talk about an herb of the week, but I really wanted to just invite you that if you are looking for a tribe of women, if you are looking for a space, a safe space to dive deeper into your medicine, if you have had a spiritual awakening, if you are going through one right now, if you are feeling this sense of wanting to deepen your communication with the other side or with your spiritual gifts, join the Modern Sages Soul Tribe. I will leave the link in the show notes. But if this is something that you're really wanting to step into and have support from others who are embracing that, who are also in that same space, I would highly recommend you to join. We would love to have you. Well, Demetria, I am really excited for our conversation today. Seeing all of the stuff that you're up to and just the person that you are is so inspiring. So I know that our Modern Sages Soul Tribe is going to be so blessed to have you as part of this beautiful tribe here. So, in
Thank you
doing,
for having me and
yes,
so excited to connect and have this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun.
yes, absolutely. So, before we dive into really embracing the medicine within and hearing your thoughts on all of that, can you give just a little bit of a background, of who you are, what you're up to in life, and some stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So I sort of lived a typical life. I went to school, I got a good job, I was very career focused, I got married, had kids, built all of the things that I was told by society and my parents that I was supposed to do to be happy in life. And I thought if I just nailed that American dream, that then miraculously at the end of the day I would be happy. And the reality is that I wasn't. And I got to this place in my life where I sort of had all of the things that you are supposed to, you know, build and have. And I realized I still wasn't happy. And it forced me to take a look at myself, finally, to take a look at myself, thankfully, and go deep into who I am and what my purpose is and what lights me up. And really, that journey took me to discovering my medicine and how I can exist in this world, show up for myself, and also be in a place of deep service to other people. And through that path, it led me to where I am today, which is really focused on helping people that suffer from anxiety and stress and burnout and just the overwhelm of life, and help them with finding joy and happiness through yoga therapy, primarily yoga therapy, but also spiritual mentorship. So, helping people through the process of really rediscovering who they are and what their purpose is.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yes, I think that a lot of us kind of go into that space where all of a sudden we're faced with this. Am I living life authentically? Am I making the most of this time and has it been worth it? Like, is what I've been doing worth what I want to experience? So I think that your story is absolutely beautiful in that space for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm very intrigued. So yoga has really brought that for you. And I always
Mhm.
feel so envious of people who, when they are participating in yoga and that really opens them up to this self-reflection. I
Yeah.
haven't had that experience as much with yoga as I wish that I could have.
Mhm.
And,
I can relate.
how did that work for you, or what
Yeah.
was your experience with that?
I sort of laugh because I think, I feel like I found yoga backwards. Like, all of my friends were so into yoga and, like, it's this path to this awakening and, like, bringing the mind and body together, and to be honest, like, I tried doing yoga for years, and I would go and I would be miserable, and I was like, "This is not for me." So, like, people that don't connect with yoga, I get it, like, 100% have been there.
Yes.
And then I went, on this really deep spiritual journey. And as I sort of like got deeper and deeper into it, I had this realization that I was my whole life really dissociated from my body. And my spiritual journey of finding myself also was this really beautiful journey that was also not really connected to my body, and I was really happy there. I was like, "This is actually great. Like, I don't need my body. I can just be like, living in this spiritual place, and, I don't have to reconnect into the flesh." And what happened in my journey is that I realized that I really can't live there. You can't live only in the spiritual, that the whole purpose is to embody our like human body, to be here in relationship with our friends, our family, our parents, our siblings, our children. And to do that, you need a healthy vessel.
Right.
And that's the point where my girlfriend said to me, like, "Hey, you really need some yoga in your life." And I was like, "I've tried that. Doesn't really work." Um, and and she was like, "Just do like I'll come over and we'll do a little yoga." And we did it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like now I got it." And really then I dove into the science behind it, like the modern science and the ancient science, but the modern science behind it, around really how beautiful a practice it is to help us um, heal from trauma and really do it in a way where you can reconnect to your body. And it was the final piece of, I mean, yoga is it's to yoke the body and the spirit. And for me, it was that final piece of integrating this really beautiful self discovery spiritual journey I had been on with being able to be present in my body and like with my friends and family. So that's how I came about it. I again laugh because I think it's a little bit backwards. Like all my other girlfriends that are really into yoga, they're like, we found yoga and then went on this like really beautiful spiritual self discovery journey.
Right.
And so I think you can come to it from, well, clearly you can come to it from either side because I did it. I
Yeah,
did it a little backwards, but yeah.
that's beautiful because I feel as though, there's so many different methods and so many different things, and so I think it's perfect that you experienced it, almost reverse in that space. But I do think that when people are really stepping into embracing their medicine, of course, we open up to this opportunity of spiritual growth, and it can be easy for others to get stuck in that spirit realm where it's like, oh, it's easier, it's more freeing, it feels sometimes more natural to be in that spiritual state of existence versus incorporating into the physical.
Mhm.
Um, and I've experienced that time and time again, going in different paths and exploring ups and downs with that as well. So I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Well, it's a really safe space, right? Like when you access that dimension that exists right beyond the 3D, when you get into that space and anything, beyond that as you go deeper, I think you really, at least for me, my experiences have been that you just feel safe, loved. Like, I mean, it's so healing to be there. And so for a long time, I was like, why would you exist anywhere else? Why wouldn't you just always want to be fully in that space of oneness or connectedness, you know? And it I think part of my process was realizing that you like part of our work, part of the medicine is to heal ourselves individually and then bring that back down into our everyday lived experience and offer that to other people. So if you're, like only existing up in the spiritual realm, it's really hard to bring that and offer
Yeah.
it to other people. So it's the work of bringing it down into the body that allows you to really share it with others.
Yeah, absolutely. So for one who is wanting to bring that more into the body and bring that integration, what tools or tips do you have in that space?
I think so often we talk in really esoteric language, and it's finding the ways that you can bridge your experience to whoever you're talking to and their experience and their reality. So it's really
Mhm.
easy when you're talking to, friends that are in the same place as you and you can talk about all the things and connect and it feels really good. But as I started to talk to people outside of my inner circle, I realized that they really weren't able to grasp what in the world I was talking about. Like I kind of sounded crazy, right? And I was like, oh, okay, there's something here that's not able to really integrate. So I started with thinking about what's the language I could use to bridge where I'm at and where they're at. And that started to help me actually figure out, oh, okay, this thing that I'm talking about, there's actually layers, and it's okay to use maybe more accessible language or like language that's less esoteric or woo woo or spiritual to help people be able to wrap their heads around what we're talking about and also to not scare people, right? How do you welcome somebody into a space and make it feel really safe for them so that you can like bring them deeper into their own exploration. If you start out with like, hey, there's this like really big thing and you have to do it, like that can be intimidating for people. So
Yeah.
it's finding the common ground with those around you that maybe aren't quite in the same space as you that helps you start to understand how to integrate it in your own body too, because there's parts of you that are feeling the same way that that other person is probably feeling.
Yeah, that's a good point too, is especially when we're embracing that, when we're really excited about, all the things that we're learning, it can be so easy to want to share it with everybody. And I also think that's where a lot of wounds can come into play too, is if you're sharing things in a way that can't be understood or it could be looked at as, crazy or interesting or just unusual. It's
Mhm.
always about having that right audience or the right ways and the right words to use, and so I think that also can help. I know for myself, especially stepping into my own intuitive, business, that it can be easy to wanna be so excited to share everything and then be very wounded because
Yeah.
you weren't received as much as, like, giving all of your heart to someone who's not wanting it or who doesn't receive it like you wish that they would.
Right. And I think for my own business, my own journey, my own path, I was like that, right? I was like, oh, I can heal you. Like, I can do all these amazing things. And some people were like, yes, sign me up. I'm totally in on that. And then another group of people were like, this is really like scary and I'm not sure what to make of it. And I was like, oh, so my one of my core wounds is having dealt with anxiety and corporate burnout, right? And I really believe that whatever our wounds are become our medicine. And so I thought, oh, of course, let me start with something that's really palpable for people that no matter where you are on the journey, if you're suffering from anxiety or PTSD or trauma in some way and you're able to acknowledge that, I can help you, and I can help you if you think about that in terms of like the medical terms of anxiety and stress and burnout and complex PTSD, or if you're along the journey and you're like, I have ancestral trauma that I need to heal. I'm like, I can also help you with that and speak to you in that language. But in order to help the most number of people, being able to speak about it in terms that they're comfortable with is really helpful for them.
Yeah. That's a very beautiful perspective. And I do strongly believe as well that your greatest, where you can be wounded the most, I also think is where you have such gifts. And I see that's also where so much purpose and so much of your lifestyle can come from. And it's kind of, it just feels so interesting because it's almost like reverse. It's like, well, if I'm being so wounded in that area, I don't want to jump into it. But it's almost like in this human journey, we're called into that shadow, into that space to bring it
Yeah.
out. And it's
Yeah.
so scary, but it's so rewarding at the same time.
Mhm. Right, and I think that's the journey of the healer, right?
Right.
Is that you have been willing, you've taken the courage to jump into the darkness, into the shadow, and actually integrate that shadow into your light. And all of the sudden, that's where our power comes from.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're just light, you're like, "Oh, you're just light, but, like, what do you do with this light?" And if you're just stuck in the shadow, you don't know there's light, right?
Yeah.
So it is that integration of the shadow and the light, the darkness and the love that really empowers us to serve, whatever that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you have 2 books, it's Finding Your Light and Returning to the Light Within.
Mhm.
So, I'm assuming this has definitely been a huge part of what those books, can bring to those who are listening as well as even in your own space. Like, assuming that your incorporation has really brought you into that space of wanting to channel this message and to give it to people through a book. So, do you wanna talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My first book, Return to the Light Within, is really my story of my spiritual awakening. So it goes through my ceremonies and just fully dives into my experiences. And what's interesting about this conversation is we're talking about accessible language, and that book does not have accessible language. That is not where I was when I wrote it. It's like full tilt, like all the stuff, like full spiritual language, all the things, and I love it. I love that it offers people that are in that place in their journey, um, like a life raft that somebody else has been there, somebody else has gone through the journey of
Yeah.
like really discovering these things that we don't talk about openly in our society. And when I was going through it, I was like, felt really alone. I thought nobody else had had any experience like this, you know? And then I came out the other side and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so many people I've talked to that have had similar experiences." And so I decided to write it down and offer it out so that people could read it and, feel like there was somebody else that has been there with them. And then the second book is really about finding your own light. Like, what is the process? How can you start to think about what your wounds are? What trauma have you had? And how do you start to embrace that in a really loving way to discover your purpose and really what you do have to offer? And so that's more of a like workbook, guidebook
Oh,
format.
that's beautiful. And I think it's having both and bridging that into the space, I feel is so what is needed right now in the consciousness. Like there's so much going on and there's so many people, especially, those in the soul tribe too, who are listening, who are in this space of growth and are, opening up to all these different options and possibilities. And I think finding the light within is such a powerful concept because, of course, it can be easy to look outside, to look at everyone
Mhm.
else's experiences and what works for them. And I think that that can definitely open up and spark a lot of our own interests and our own things, but
Mhm.
really it all comes back to embracing and experiencing that light and that medicine within because no one else can say what it is that you need to do. And so I love
No.
that there's that workbook to really help. kind of like bring people into that space themselves. And of
Mhm.
course, listening to what has worked for other people really is so powerful too, because we definitely need that. But I think a lot of healers too are having this switch of wanting to help people be able to do that on their own versus to
Mhm.
rely upon somebody else in doing
Mhm.
so, which I think is a beautiful shift that also I've seen, take up a lot recently as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there is such power in helping another person on their journey without, like, leading them or walking, hand holding them through it. It's like, how do I be supportive to your journey without influencing it, without changing it and allowing you to do the really powerful work that each of us does to dig through the shadow to find out, what our medicine is. And I think what's so beautiful, especially about what you share, is everybody's medicine is so unique. Like, even if we offer the exact same thing, like two, healers could offer the exact same thing, and how they deliver it and who they deliver it to is going to be so unique because of their particular life experiences and how they interact with the other person's energy. And I think that that's something that's so beautiful, and something really beautiful about the healing community in general, right? Is that there's, I mean, there's always competition in any field, but I think when you get into talking about consciousness and healers and medicine, we're all actually doing the same thing, and working together in a way that, you know, is harder to find outside of this space.
Yeah. And when you're speaking, this just sparked my thought is I also feel that it's really important to also consider and to think about the aspect that sometimes we do grow out of certain people. Like
Mhm.
sometimes if someone's really helped you for a while, or maybe you're even, you're a healer, you're doing intuitive work, you're doing any kind of healings or whatever that looks like, this sometimes it's okay to set a boundary and be like, for some reason, I'm just not feeling like this is my space anymore, or maybe working with that person. And I feel like it's okay to honor that and to know that there's also upscales and different spaces of growth as well. And so
Mhm.
I think that's also a part of embracing the wounds is like being worried that people are going to reject you or you're going to reject others. And so you kind of like hold on to those people, but it's like trusting in our light, trusting in that medicine even deeper to know
Mhm.
that there are going to be people who come and go. And that's okay. That's part of life, whether it be relationships or even people that you're working with intuitively or in healings as well. So I don't know why, but that just really popped up to me.
I think it's
That's
part of the expansion, right? Like, as we evolve, we're expanding. As we expand, as we expand, we're evolving. And I will tell you, like, I have done a lot of different things since I left the corporate world. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a psychic. And then I was like, oh, I'm doing Reiki. Oh, I'm actually doing this kind of healing. I'm doing this. And I would put it out, and people would come to me, and it was perfect. Like, I would do that for the time period that it felt right, and people would find me when they needed to, and then I would evolve to the next thing. And I think one of the things that's really powerful, if you can accept that you're in this process of evolution, then you don't have to wait for like a thing before you start to help other people. You get to try it on, and then as soon as you're like, at least for me, as soon as I was like, "Ugh, I don't wanna do this session," like, as soon as I had that feeling of like, "Oh god, I have to go do, like, this thing," then I was like, "Oh, this is like, I'm evolving out of this," and then I would look at, like, what's coming in, what am I excited about, right? So if you can constantly follow the path of ease. It's one thing that I always talk about. Like, follow the path of ease and joy. And if you just continue to step into that, you're going to find what resonates with you. And in a really weird way, it might take you on some weird twists and turns through some stuff that you are not expecting. But where it lands you is in a place where you feel really good about what you're doing in life. And I mean, what more could you ask for than to do something that you absolutely love in life?
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that we, just as others are continually growing and we can have so much grace for others in their journey and hold space for them, it's also good to hold space for ourselves because we too are in that same space of growth and evolution in that way as well. So that is a good reminder. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Always heal yourself before you're healing others, right? Like, always
Absolutely.
prioritize yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So in your transition between, the corporate world and more into this heart-centered, heart-based, lifestyle and career,
Mhm.
what were some of the ups and downs? What brought you how did you find the substance of all of that?
Um, it was challenging, right? As I navigated through my childhood, through my career, I really didn't have any semblance of understanding who I was. I knew that if I did certain things, like, that coworkers, that management would reward me for being good at my job, right? And so I just kept getting better and better at that. And but there wasn't any personal passion in it. And what I ended up realizing when I left corporate America was I was addicted to external validation. And I actually didn't even I wasn't aware of it, and I didn't know that there was like inner validation. I didn't know that I could just know who I was without, the labels and the titles and, the ranking in the organization. Like, I just didn't have any concept that something else existed. And I had reached a point in my career where I was pretty burnt out, and also um, knew that if I continued in the path that I was headed, that I might be really successful in my career, but would not have good relationships with my children or my husband. I wasn't in a place where I could like even maintain friendships because I was so inundated in my career. And so I decided to leave my job and focus on my kids and my husband and myself. And that was just so challenging because I really had to let go of all the external validation in like one foul swoop. It was just gone. I was like,
Yeah.
you go out and you're like, oh, like, what do you do? Who are you? I was like, oh my God, I don't have my job title to tell anybody anymore. Like, who am I?
Right.
And so that was a big struggle. And, you know, coming full circle through what the journey I've been on to be able to, say, like, oh, actually, who I am is X, Y, and Z. And it has nothing to do with maybe what I offer or, I'm not looking for a title necessarily. It's like, I just am who I am. There's nothing more to
That's
me than who I am in this
than
moment.
who I am right now. Just right
Hmm.
now, right here. This is who I am. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I can offer you certain things. I have skills that I can use to help you, but at the core of me, I am this spirit. I'm this human being right now. I don't There's not like another thing that I need to explain.
And it's almost like I'm also seeing as you're speaking this cycle of we talked about the cycle of evolution or how you've experienced things, you did Reiki, you were psychic, you're doing yoga, like you're doing all these things, but it's almost like I see this cycle coming up where it's like, okay, we're starting it, we're really embracing it, and there's like the stress and the excitement and the fear, and then it's like the learning curve, and then all of a sudden it's almost like it feels like when we start to really label ourselves as this is who I am, this is what I do, this is everything about myself, it almost feels like we get called into this space of like letting it go
Hmm.
or growing or surrendering so that we don't get stuck in that space of complacency, even if it is something that has brought a lot of passion in the past. It just
Hmm.
seems like there's these cycles that we all go through, and we know that everything in Mother Earth, everything we experience in the universe is all cyclical, but I'm just,
Hmm.
like, seeing this cycle of growth and evolution, and it's okay to let
Hmm.
go and to move forward and to listen to what your heart is desiring, so I love your
Yeah,
example of that, and I'm sure in the next 5 years, you're probably gonna be in a whole different space than you are now, and that's the
completely.
beauty of it.
Yeah, and I love the cycle that you're talking about, and one thing I think early on, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm letting go of this thing and it's gonna be gone," right? And what I've realized is how I work with people today has every single one of those layers embedded in it,
Mm,
right? I still channel, I still tap into people's energy to know how to help them best. It's not that those things are gone, it's that we're just looping through the spiral and building on it. And sometimes to get to that next loop of the spiral, the next cycle, you have to let go of something so that you can walk through the door to the next level. Um, and so, it's all building on each other. We're not going backwards. We don't go back into the void with nothing.
yeah. And I think that also goes back into us sitting and finding that light within is when we get comfortable with that, like that level of light, you could say, then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, it's time to brighten or it's time to access it deeper. It's time to brighten my own connection to it, which brings
Mhm.
it, bigger and brighter in the same time. But it can be extremely intimidating.
So challenging to let
Yeah.
go. It's so hard to go back into the dark when you're like, no, I just want to stay here. It's so beautiful in
I
the
feel
light,
so happy
you
right
know?
now.
Yeah, completely. And I think, if you can think about maybe the first experience that you had, like that first time period where you were like waking up, that the like early days of this journey where you realized you were on a different journey than you had been on before.
Yeah.
Um, I remember that time and thinking like, "Oh my god, this light, like where did it come from? It's so powerful. It's inside of me. Like, oh my god. This is crazy." And then what I've realized is like you can't know the next step until you're there. You can't feel it. And so every time I let go of something, I constantly am thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know there was this much light. I didn't know that I could hold this much of my own spirit in me. I didn't know that I could feel so empowered." And I would have told you that day one of this journey that I didn't know that there could be more and that there couldn't possibly be more. And yet, every single time I take a step forward, I'm shocked that there's more.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's just part of the journey and part of the trusting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. So with where you're at right now with yoga and with your coaching programs, what have you seen that's kind of been what people are experiencing right now? Because I know there's always this energy we're learning about in the consciousness and the cosmos. And have you seen something specific that you've been working with people on in that space?
Um, I mean, I think when I just tap into what's happening in the collective right now, we went through like a really big spike of a huge number of people that woke up, right? Over
Hmm.
months and months, really during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like a bunch of babies were hatched, right? Is how I like to think about it. Like we all
Right.
hatched, and then there's been like this interesting time of like people growing into whatever their medicine is. And there's this whole new wave of people that are awake and that are exploring. And then there's been this like interesting lull the last couple of months in energy. I mean, there's been a ton of stuff going on, but generally speaking, like from that peak, we came off of it,
Yeah.
and we're coming into another peak. And so I keep telling my friends, I'm like, get ready. There's a lot of people that are coming online in the next couple of months, um, and I think what's interesting is those people that are coming online, like there's just a larger support system to hold them, right? Like, and that's sort of the beauty of it is like as you go back, there's every time there's a wave of people that wake up or hatch or come online,
Yeah.
whatever words you want to use. There's a bigger support system. Indra's net is getting bigger, and we're lighting up all of our little points in the net by
Right.
doing our own healing and finding our own medicine. And that just allows a like larger, stronger safety net for the next group.
Yes.
And so I feel like that's what's happening right now is we're just, strengthening Indra's net.
Right. Yeah, that's a beautiful visual. I'm just like seeing that all in my mind as well. And I think
Mhm,
along with that, it's easy to get, there's two different things, right? Is it can be easy to get stuck in the space of always having to go into this cycle of healing of like, oh, I'm not doing this,
mhm,
I'm not doing that, I'm tearing down all the walls. Like, of course we need to do that. But there also takes this step of it's also time to share and to speak and to be that
mhm.
person. And it's really bridging the both is it's
Yeah.
having that healing and that self-reflection on
Mhm,
top of rising to that occasion and to start sharing and to start helping other people, and that's part of it, that same thing with the
mhm.
spirit and the physical, it's that integration. And
Totally.
so, I don't know, I just feel like, if someone's listening and they feel called into that space, like, it's definitely time to start sharing your
Mhm.
medicine and embracing
100%
it
time.
even more, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
what better opportunity and what greater gift can you give to those around you and to yourself and to your soul's experience in this physical body right now than to embrace that medicine and to then start sharing it and to not get stuck in that cycle of, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I have to do more inner child work." Well, we're gonna constantly be
Mhm.
doing that, and so
Forever.
why not show up and be in a different space in the process?
Right. I mean, if you've done any work at all, if you've done any healing work, you are one step, at least one step ahead of somebody else that you can help. If we
Right.
all waited until we were like divinely perfect, we would all be dead and not able to help anybody, right? Like we are going to be in process for the rest of our lives. So there is never going to be a time where you're perfect and you're like figured it all out. So, and I also think that as you start to serve your medicine in whatever way that is, that you learn so much more about yourself. You
Yes.
really do, like you said, integrate all of the healing that you've done when you're able to share it with somebody else. It is just so much more powerful to be able to speak it and share it and, show somebody what's going on with you and talk about your own path. It's so healing in like another layer.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's that unraveling. It's that space of owning who you are and owning your light and sharing it and owning it more and sharing it, and I know that can feel tedious at sometimes for people, but at the same time, that's part of our soul's journey, and if we weren't learning those things, we wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
so, so beautiful. I love that. Is there anything else that's kinda popping up in your mind that you wanted to hit upon or address that's sticking out for you? I know that's kind of a random, weird
Hmm.
question.
Yeah. Um, Not really. I mean, I think that wherever you are, whatever ways that you're using to heal yourself, remember to heal yourself and that the medicine will just naturally ripple out. So even if you are not somebody that is called to like serve and like change your life around to, maybe leave a corporate job or leave whatever you're doing that's really, supporting you financially, just by doing your own work, you change the frequency in which you exist. And there is automatically a ripple effect to the people that you engage with. And so, however your life looks, you don't have to try so hard. It doesn't have to be like this difficult choice of, am I a healer or am I like whatever 3D title that you have? Like you get to be both. And just by existing, you and doing the work for yourself, you're healing the people around you.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. I just felt like I'm like, "Okay, I just need to ask her there's some other information that no, I know it needs to come
And
out,"
I
and
started with no, there's nothing else.
that's how amazing, spirit is and all of that. I think that that is 100% all of it. I couldn't even say any better, so I just have really enjoyed my time with you. And of course, those who are interested, I'll leave all your information in the show notes. I know you do. We have online classes, correct? And
Yeah.
then one-on-one as well as workshops and retreats. And of course, you have your beautiful books. And so I think that, if people are drawn into that space who want to learn about you more, I'll definitely leave that in the show notes for sure.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun chatting with you today.
Yes, I have loved it as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm just excited to see you continue to share your medicine, and I know it will help our tribe dive deeper into theirs as well. So thank you. Do you feel called to connect to your medicine within? Have you wanted to strengthen your spiritual gifts? Are you looking for ways to incorporate the sacred into your everyday life? Maybe do you want to have like minded friends in a tribe who can connect with you? Modern Sage's Soul Tribe is dedicated to spiritual seekers like yourself who are embracing the medicine within. Now, in this tribe, we are going to be doing moon gatherings, amazing spiritual gift giveaways, connecting to a soul tribe, as well as hosting mystery school classes. If you are feeling called to connect to the soul tribe, I will leave a link for you in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to Modern Sages Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us online. Blessings.